My brother and I went to see the Power Rangers movie today. Now, when I saw the initial trailers for this movie, I was not impressed. And you can watch my first thoughts video on this film to learn why. The short form is, I was not enthusiastic about another movie where the teen heroes were delinquents, especially since that's not what the original Power Rangers were. If this was an entirely new story with a new theme and new Rangers, that'd be fine. But when they're reinventing the original cast with the original names, the kids are named Jason, Zach, Kimberly, Billy, and Trini, then I want some resemblance to the original personalities. Surprisingly, they did have some. They did keep some aspects. Jason has leadership skills. Zach is kind of the fun one, although this Zach is a little odd. For the character and the situation they wrote for him, he is too carefree. Billy is the nerd, although this one doesn't really act like a nerd. Not much past his introduction. I so did not like what they did with Kimberly and her story, and I'll talk about that when I get into the spoiler part of the review. Trini's character, I felt, it wasn't bad, but it was really vague. Like, the part where she reveals her struggle with her family and identity, I felt there were multiple issues she was trying to talk about and zero clarity as to any of them. This movie both did exactly what I thought it was going to do, and yet did it better than I thought it was going to. The kids, their characters, apart from Trini, weren't blank slates. Trini wasn't really blank, she was just too vague. They did have distinctive personalities, and they did come together as a group in a way that made some sense. Another thing I was not looking forward to was the armor ranger suits growing on them. As I mentioned before, somewhat like a symbiote. It is handled about as well as it could have been. It ties into something mentioned in the show that was never explained, and isn't here much either, but the tone is set a little better. The morphing grid, a technology they tap into to be able to morph. In the show, the technology was just there, and Zordon just teleported them to become Rangers. In this movie, the technology is heavily dependent on them coming together and learning to be a team, which is great. It's just other parts, other elements that make it not work as well as it could or should have. Now let me say before I go there, I think the actors did amazingly well with what they were given. And I do know that at least some of them were Power Rangers fans, and that always helps. When you have fans of original material working on a reinvention, it doesn't always work, but it's better than people with no knowledge of the source material. And Power Rangers is a huge nostalgia trip for me. The original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which was based on Zeo Ranger from the Japanese Super Sentai series, first aired in America in the mid-90s. And I was in elementary school then. I watched every episode until it's almost of Zeo. Turbo was really when I dropped it. Until later when Dino Thunder. I picked it up again when the Dino Thunder show came on, and then I've seen some here, some there since then. I so desperately wanted to be the Blue Ranger. Though not like David Yost and not Triceratops. Although I did like the Power Lance. I wanted to be a cyan, which is an electric blue color, Velociraptor Power Ranger. And I know there have been Raptor cycles and Raptor mounts for Rangers in the later series, the ones that have dinosaurs later on. I wanted a full Raptor Zord. and I would have made the lance into a double-bladed sword, much like the Star Wars saber staff. I was so excited to see the dinosaurs in this movie. I am an incurable prehistoric creatures otaku, particularly dinosaurs. Dinosaurs and the dinosaurs look cool. Well, except only Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops are actually dinosaurs. Pterosaurs, the pterodactyl, weren't. They were related to... They had a not too distant common ancestor with dinosaurs, but they weren't cladistically dinosaurs. They weren't in the clade. And Mastodon and saber-toothed cat or tiger were not dinosaurs at all. These Zords look more Transformer-like than I would have wanted. And I can't help but think that the Zords were intentionally modeled after the Transformers, with all the Transformers movies that have come out. And, maybe they were originally. But they both look like the new hyper-detailed robotic Transformers in those recent movies, which suck. The movies suck, not the... depending... I'm never a huge Transformers fan, but... anyway, that's hardly Power Rangers' fault. And I was hoping they'd resemble the actual prehistoric animals a lot more. I wanted a really Tyrannosaur-looking Tyrannosaur. I think the only one that actually worked with the updated look is the Pterodactyl Zord. I also wanted them to roar. Why didn't Tyrannosaurus roar? I'll probably have to make another of these. I could go on for ages about what works and what doesn't work in this movie, both big and little things. I guess I'll talk a little about the characters again. I'm going to go into major spoilers now, so until you've seen the movie, end here. Okay. Jason. Decre Montgomery was pretty good as this character. He really did come off to me as a younger Austin St. John, even though their characters are actually supposed to be about the same age. There's one problem, though. The setting of him up as a screw-up in the beginning of this movie, there was very little purpose to it. Like, we get the story that he threw away his career as an athlete for a reason we're never given. And throughout the movie, he's legitimately trying to take on the leadership role. I mean, he's never really shunning it. It does realistically take him time to figure it out. It was the problem I had with making the Power Rangers start off as screw-ups, delinquents, that I talked about in the First Thoughts video. Why is that necessary? You can tell a good story with good kids. Good kids have real problems too. Real struggles to overcome. Zach. I don't have much to say about this guy. Ludi Lin is passable, but not all that interesting. He has a very simple story and family situation, not much beyond that. I still like Walter Jones's take on Zach more. Trini. I pretty much covered her already. Too vague. Not really sure what's actually going on with her. It's sort of implied that she's struggling with identity of maybe being a lesbian, or there's changing schools a lot. I'm not... The way the question is put and her answer, really inconclusive. And shortly after the kids find the spaceship and their power coins, they try to get away from their authorities in a car and end up trying to outpace a train, and they get slammed. Then wake up the next morning with their powers. Now, putting aside for a moment that the Power Rangers in the shows never had superpowers while demorphed, they had karate, gymnastics, and other skills that they had built up on their own over many years, but never superpowers. And putting aside that in real life, that crash would have killed them all, instantly. The original Trini, a Vietnamese girl named Thuy Tran, died in a car crash on September 3rd, 2001, leaving her friends and fans all over the world in terrible shock. Trini was actually, she was my favorite character in the original show. Remembering that, this was really hard to watch. It really came off to the fans who were kids when the original show was released. I know there's hypersensitivity of a lot of issues going around right now, but this seemed really callous towards that memory. I hope it wasn't intended to be, but that was hard to take. Kimberly. Oh, I did not like her story. Naomi Scott was fine, but there's a scene where Kimberly visits Jason in his room at night to tell him her secret. Now, of course, if this had been a boy visiting a girl in her room at night, he'd have been called a pervert or even rapist in a heartbeat, way before anyone would stop to actually try to figure out the truth. And way before anything would have actually happened, I hope you know, whether it would or not. So keep that double standard in mind. But that's actually not what upset me about this. Kimberly reveals that she once did something to another girl, and it's horrible. I mean, I know teenagers can be jerks and bitches to each other, as adults also can be, and often are, and are often to children and teenagers. But what she did was truly unforgivable. I'm okay with redemption stories, but Kimberly would have had to severely make up for her transgression here against this girl, who we never meet and have no idea what happened to afterwards. The original Kimberly Hart, Amy Jo Johnson's character, would never have done this. Naomi Scott should have been the one who died in this movie. And then something like promised to Zordon to do better for the rest of her life before coming that and making it up to this girl. Anything short of that, and she would not have deserved to be a Power Ranger. Billy. He's okay. He's not bad, not great. I did think David Yost was too passive a Blue Ranger. I don't think he displayed enough... I'm talking about... I'm now going to talk about the new Billy. There's my bird clock again. Just wanted to let that tweet. RJ Cycler, I think he's not nerdy enough. Not enough focus on intellect to really reinvent the idea. The Billy of Mighty Morphin. On the other hand, he was okay. Alpha 5, however, I'll give you. In the original show, Alpha 5 was annoying. But he was also cute, and he didn't really ruin anything. This Alpha 5 is a bit less annoying, but not cute at all. At least not to me. And Lucky Star fans like myself know cute. I don't like this movie's design of Alpha. This movie's version of Alpha. Rita Repulsa, as some speculated, was a Green Ranger. I think it was an interesting idea to make Zordon a former Power Ranger, and Rita, I guess, was originally part of his team, but turned on them at some point and killed the other Rangers apart from Zordon. One thing I was not expecting at all was the Zeo Crystal. The Zeo Crystal is in this, though I guess it's some kind of planetary life sustainer, which is not what it was in the show, and the ship that brought them to Earth in this movie crashed 65 million years ago, maybe being the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. I don't have an inherent problem of revisited stories not entirely resembling the original material, but it at least has to make some sense. And this seems a little all over the place. If the Zeo Crystal or the ship is the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, if something... Is the Zeo Crystal a life destroyer? Something doesn't add up. I had this idea at the end of the movie that Rita would be stripped of her Green Ranger powers, and then in the next movie, if there is a next movie, find someone to give the Green Power coin to and enslave as an antagonist to the Power Rangers team. And we get Tommy in the second movie. I just thought of something. If they did a story where Tommy comes in and is the evil Green Ranger, and Kimberly helps redeem him, and he also helps her redeem herself for her past deed, her past evil deed, that could work very well. So, a few final thoughts for now. What they did with Goldar was also weird. In the original show, Goldar was just a minion, or at least a soldier. In this, he's some eldritch abomination made of molten gold. And Rita's collecting gold throughout the entire movie to build him. I don't know. I guess it sort of worked okay. I loved seeing the individual swords battle. We got that in the 1995 movie, but hardly ever in the first show. I think they did that a little bit of that later on. I did not like the design of the Megazord, though. I wanted to see the Zords change shape. You really don't see it happen in this movie. I like that the stakes, the actual danger of death was really amped up in this movie. But I did want to see the building of the conglomerate that the Megazord is, and have it much more resemble the original Megazord too, for nostalgia's sake.